Hey everybody, it's Joric. Welcome back. I hope you're doing great wherever you are in the world. Today, this video is about rental contracts. Most of you moving to Portugal are going to probably get a rental property before you purchase something, and you need it for your D7 visa or for any visa that you're going to be applying for. So I want to go through a couple of gotchas or things that I think you should know and be aware of so that you have eyes wide open and you're protecting yourself as much as you can when it comes to rental agreements. So the first thing about a rental agreement is, as you're looking at it, I would always say it's worth having a lawyer take a look at it and review it. But there are some people that are not comfortable having an attorney look at it for whatever reason. If you feel like if you looked at enough rental agreements and you feel like you can make a decision and make sure everything's okay on your own, more power to you. But with that, the biggest thing that I would do to begin as you're looking at a rental agreement is have it translated into your language, whatever language that is. Generally, you can copy and paste that into, let's say, a Google Translate, and then you can read it in your language to just get a feel for what the language is like and what some of the things are that may be unique to Portugal that you may be used to or you may not be used to. So it's good to have it in your language. For me, it was easy to be able to translate it into English and read through all of it. And I will say I've reviewed close to 300 rental agreements in Portugal, and for all types of properties. And with that, meaning farms, single family homes, as well as most of it was apartments. And there is some themes out there that I think you need to be really aware of. So if you get an attorney, great. If not, I understand why you may be hesitant to do so. Get it translated into your language. The biggest thing that I want to talk about with the rental agreements is when I've reviewed them, over 90% of them were boilerplate templates. And what I mean by that, if you're going, what does boilerplate mean? It simply means you typed in rental agreement on Google, downloaded it, and then you wrote in, landlord's name, am going to rent this property at address, write in the address or type in the address to your name, and that is it. So it's a basic contract, general, very, very general. Sometimes it may be specific to Portugal, sometimes it's just not. But where there's the biggest pain points, and I want to make sure that you think about this and you read through that, that's why it's super important to read and read and read, is this point. Who pays for damages to the apartment? Now, common sense, you may go, well, if I do something to the apartment, I should be paying damage. And I agree with that. Almost all template, even if they're custom contracts, say something about, okay, the tenant is responsible for any damage that they do, they are going to be responsible for, may or may not get the deposit back, may have to incur further costs based upon what damage gets done. But this is where things get tricky, because generally speaking, those contracts also say tenant is responsible for any and all damage that occurs to the apartment. And where dozens of people have gotten into trouble by not ferreting that out and going back and forth with the landlord to explicitly state what the tenant's responsible for and what the landlord's responsible for, are things like, and these are things that have happened, so which is why I'm making the video. A couple, a bathtub above them in the top floor flooded, came right through the ceiling. So you imagine the ceiling above my head came crashing through into their living room. So who pays for that? One would think, okay, the tenant or the landlord who's in the top space would be paying for damages to take care of this space that was damaged. depends on how the rental contract was signed. So if you sign stating that you are responsible for any and all damage, which most template driven or boilerplate contracts say, you're on the hook, not the landlord. Things like common areas, something happens with a terrace or a balcony, or there's something outside of your door in your apartment that, let's say something happens with the flooring. There is a leak in the common area, meaning let's say you're on a top floor, or if you're in a single family home and there's a roof that's leaking. Generally speaking, the landlord would be, depending on what country you're from, responsible for the common area. But if that's not spelled out in the contract, and you sign off saying that you are going to be responsible for any and all damage, you most likely are going to have to pay for those damages. There are a number of people that have reached out to me over the years, which is why I got into reading contracts and trying to make videos about it, where the landlord was sticking them with a bill because the roof was leaking, and it just so happened to be they had a top floor in an apartment leaking into their apartment, and they were going, it's a landlord responsibility. The landlord's going, you signed off saying that you were responsible for it. That is a major thing and the most important thing that you need to review in the contract is not just sign off and make an assumption based upon your home country. Well, in my home country, the landlord's automatically responsible for X. I'm automatically responsible for Y. Doesn't work that way in Portugal, and if you send me an email, I can give you probably 20 to 25 examples where someone thought that and then they ended up being responsible. That is a very important thing to think about and spell out what you are going to be responsible for and what the landlord's going to be responsible for if something gets damaged in the apartment. And especially if it's like an act of God, meaning the roof leaks or a lightning bolt or a tree falls from rain and falls onto your balcony and busts the windows of the apartment. Those are all things that, in my estimation, the landlord should be paying for, not you. But you want to spell that out. And if the landlord's not willing to help spell that out with you, then I wouldn't sign the agreement. As I make that comment, almost everyone who's reached out to me, and I, again, give this information to them, when they go back to the landlord has no problem making sure that there's an addendum on the contract that spells out who's paying for what. Because again, remember, most of the contracts that you're going to look at are just pulled off the internet. They're not specific to any particular country. In some cases they may be, in most cases they're not going to be. So with that, you really want to be able to know what you're going to be responsible for, so that you're not paying thousands of dollars in costs for things that are not your responsibility, that you didn't cause the damage of to the apartment. There's two other things I want to touch on. The next one is pets. Don't try to screw around and have a dog and not put that in the rental agreement, because the quickest way to absolutely not get your deposit back is to not disclose pets on your rental agreement, because generally speaking, there will be pets or no pets allowed. So when you're reading the description, when you're applying to begin with, usually they'll tell you up front whether they allow pets or not and what type of pets. There might be an additional deposit, but if there is something that immigrants do where they do not disclose pets, particularly dogs, and then dogs can, depending on hardwood floors, can scratch up floors, or if it's a furnished apartment, might do damage to the apartment. So it's an automatic way, and it's also an automatic way to get evicted. Not that you're necessarily going to have that happen, but be forthright and honest so that the landlord's not, all of a sudden finding a property that is damaged when you leave and they have to spend a lot of money getting it renovated for the next potential renter. So that's something that I really would look at. The last thing I want to talk about is the deposit, because there are people, I made a video recently about people getting stiffed out of their deposits for a number of reasons. And some of it is there is no reason, meaning they left the place as they moved into it and they should get their deposit, but it's sometimes difficult to get back from some landlords. Is in the rental contract, have a date. I am to receive deposit by X date, because there isn't, you may not get it in 30 days or 60 days. There are people that have received their deposit 6 months later. There are some people that received it the day they moved out. So those are all things that I think you need to be aware of and think about if you're going to be renting an apartment in Portugal. The biggest gotcha again is who's responsible for damage, and making sure that that's spelled out, because it's of no fault. It's not malicious on the landlord. It's not like they're trying to get more money out of you. It's just because it's a basic contract, and that contract needs to be nuanced to what you will agree to and what the landlord will agree to. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video, and enjoy your travels.